Hi, this is Tamim from Tam Tech Chat. Welcome to the part 2 of the M1 Mac Studio review in July 2025. Today I will do some synthetic benchmarking of SSD, RAM, CPU, GPU and browser benchmarking of Apple's first generation Mac Studio with full M1 Max chip from 2022. Initially, I wanted to do a full review of this Mac in part 2, but I realized that it will be a long and boring video, and I won't be able to cover everything all at once. So I have decided to break it down in different parts. But first, a quick disclaimer. I have been using this Mac Studio for personal use, and I'm not paid or sponsored by anyone for making this video. At the time of making this video, I have macOS Sequoia 15.5 installed on this Mac. For SSD benchmarking, I'll be using Blackmagic Disk Speed Test version 3.4.2, Amorphous DiskMark version 4.0.1, AJA System Test Lite version 17.0.1, Jazz Disk Benchmark version 7.0.2, Blackmagic Raw Speed Test version 4.4, both in 4K and 8K. For RAM or memory benchmarking, I will use Amorphous Memory Mark version 3 to measure RAM module read and write performance. For CPU and GPU benchmarking, I will be using Maxon's Cinebench 2024 to test single-core and multi-core performance of both CPU and GPU scores. I will also be using Geekbench 6 to test CPU and GPU performance for everyday tasks. I will also be using 3D Mark Steel Nomad Lite version 1.3.480, which is a cross-platform non-ray-traced benchmark to test gaming performance of this Mac. And in my case, the Steel Nomad Lite renders at 1440p scaled to my 144Hz Samsung gaming monitor. I will also do a browser benchmarking and will use Speedometer 3.1 to measure the responsiveness of web applications. And finally, I will do a real-life read and write test from an external Thunderbolt 4 SSD to the Mac Studio and vice versa. Now let's jump into the benchmarking. Now as you can see, the write speed is almost 6,000 megabytes per second, and the write speed is around about 5,500. Let's test this with Amorphous DiskMark. Here it shows the Apple M1 Max. Wow. For some reason, Amorphous DiskMark shows higher read and write speeds, up to 6,790 read and 7,028 write. Wow. The read and write speeds are quite amazing. We are hitting write speeds of almost 7,000 and the read speeds are almost 5,000. Now the Jazz Disk Benchlight read and write speeds. Well, Oh. Okay, the read speed shows over 5,000, and the write speed with this shows 2100. Let's run once again. We get the same result, 5500 and 2100 over. Okay, now let's see the Blackmagic Raw test. As you can see, this is running 8K CPU and shows the maximum of 34 FPS, and 8K metal is showing 195. Yep. Well, so it's consistent here. Let's check with 4K. Now it's changed from 8K to 4K CPU and 4K metal. Now it's much higher FPS both in CPU and metal. 135, 752 and 4. There we go. So it's consistent there. Yep, 135 and 773. Now let's test the RAM on this Mac. As you can see, it has an DDR5 64GB of RAM, Apple M1 Max. We will let it be at 512. Yes, there. Wow, these are quite high scores. 114, 119. Okay. Let's run the 3D and let's see what we get there. Yeah. The overall score is 7251. Average frame rate is 53.7. Your score is better than 81% of scores for the Apple Mac Studio M1 Max. It's because I have more RAM and 1TB SSD and 32GB of GPU. Also, your overall score, your score is better than 93% results from all other devices. Okay. There you go. This is quite a lot. Okay. We will run Maxon's Cinebench 2024. First I will do a GPU test. CPU. GPU. Now it has begun the test. I will let this run for 10 minutes and I will come back to that. Okay, now after running a GPU test, now we can see it's a little shy behind the AMD Radeon Vega Metal, where it scores up to 4669. Now let's run a CPU multi-core test. Run it for 10 minutes and I will come back to it. Okay, so there you go. After running it for 10 minutes on multi-core performance, this chip falls behind AMD's Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX 32 core and 64 threads. That's impressive. The multi-core performance for this chip, the results are 833. Let's do single core test without any delays. There you go. I'll have to remind you that I'm running these tests back to back. I will let this run for 10 minutes and I will come back to it. After running it for 10 minutes, the rendering is done and the results for the CPU single core is 112 and it's right behind M1 Ultra chip, which has a 20 core CPU. It's beating the previous generations of AMD and Threadripper and Intel Xeon and Core i9 and Core i7 processors right off the bat with single core performance. And the overall results for the GPU is 4669. For multi-core it's 833, or for single core it's 112. Now let's do a Geekbench 6 test. The test is finished and the results are in, and it has a 2410 single core score and 12907 multi-core. GPU tests. First I will run an OpenCL test to see how it performs on the GPU, and then I will run the OpenMetal. As you can see, your device GPU 1 Apple M1 Max 32 cores. OpenCL first. Wrong. Now I'll let this run and I'll come back to this later. Well, the test is done and we have the scores. Max Studio OpenCL scores 73,908. Metal benchmark. You can see how it performs there. I'm expecting it to be more. Well, it's running and I will let this finish and I'll come back to it. Well, it's finished and the results are in. It's wow, 122,601. Okay, now I will do browser benchmarking by using Speedometer version 3.1 to measure the responsiveness of web applications. Alright, now you can see that this is done, and we have a score of 33.0 plus minus 2.2. Okay, let's do a real life read and write test from an external SSD to the Mac Studio and vice versa, and find out how long time does it take to copy a total of 520.91 gigabyte. It's a little over, it's almost 521 gigabytes of file. So the first copy to the Mac. There we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Well, the external disk is hot to the touch. Stop now. So it has copied a folder with 521 gigabytes of file in it in 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Now we will copy from the Mac and paste to the SSD. There you go. Stopped. File is again the same file, 521 gigabytes. The SSD is a little hot, that doesn't thermal throttle. Okay, a little over 1 minute and 119, more than almost 200 gigabyte was written to the SSD. Impressive speeds there. With that, there you go. 3 minutes, there you have it. And there we go. Yes, 521 gigs of file. By the way, in part 3 I will be doing some real life 5.3K 10-bit GoPro footage and ProRes RAW video editing with DaVinci Resolve, so stay tuned for that. This is it for me for today. Hope you find the video useful, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.